In this video, I'll be going over an updated guide for Havoc Demon Hunter in Mythic Plus for the first season of Dragonflight. So obviously, the first and most important thing for your Mythic Plus runs is going to be your talent build. Now, I'm going to give you 3 today, the one I recommend for most scenarios. One of them I recommend in a specific dungeon, or if you're looking for a little bit more single target damage, and one that is a bit of a meme, but it can be very good in higher keys or if you need burst damage. Before we get to that though, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Really helps me out, helps to share the video to more people. And with that, I'll show you the first build. So the first build that we are going to be talking about today is going to be the standard left-right build. This is your build where you use it if you want to throw your glaives, you get your rage fire. This build really is our most consistent and highest potential output for AoE damage. You offer a ton of damage with our rage fire, as well as a ton of consistent damage with accelerating blade and soul rend. Any means necessary is there as well to up the damage of your immolation aura, which thus leads to more rage fire damage, as well as things like your collective anguish fell devastation for really big uncapped AoE damage. We also come down the left side to pick up momentum, which is very, very strong in AoE, as well as essence break and know your enemy, which are some of our individually strong talents. The class tree is going to remain mostly the same for all of them. Now, there is a choice here. You can swap out Misery in Defeat to pick up something like Unleash Power for a more often stop. However, Misery in Defeat does lead to some very, very big damage every time you can sync that Sigil up with some of your other DPS abilities or burst windows. This next build on your screen here is going to be the option in the Court of Stars dungeon, or if you feel you need a little bit more priority damage. Now, I will say, even on tyrannical weeks, I would still recommend the left-right build over this. However, if you personally want to play this build, then go ahead, but I would recommend this in Court of Stars no matter what. This build is very good because of Glaive Tempest offering a very strong, powerful, consistent cleave option, as well as a lot of damage coming from your Shattered Destiny Cycle of Hatred, allowing you to get 2 death sweeps every single I-Beam window. Your I-Beam is also very powerful in AoE with this build because of Blind Fury, making it last very long, and just how many of them you get with Cycle of Hatred. Finally, your AoE also comes from Inner Demon. Now, in this build right here, I've put a point into Improved Fell Rush, because this is kind of the option you put for damage. If you're playing this build and you don't need the damage, because Improved Fell Rush, honestly, not very strong, you can drop this point and put it either into Nether Walk or into Fell Eruption, depending on if you need an immunity or you want a little bit more stops. You do have to put this point in something in the top here, and those 3 nodes here are going to be the best ones for you, either utility or a little tiny bit of damage. Theoretically, I guess you could throw it into Isolated Prey. However, it's never really an option to do this because even in AoE, a lot of the damage, even in dungeons, a lot of the time you're still going to be fighting multiple targets. This build is very powerful for something like Court of Stars, as I mentioned, because of just how small most of the packs there are. Something like Glaive Tempest gets a lot of value in that dungeon, and it's also very, very strong for the hard parts, such as the second boss, allowing you to cleave down those waves pretty quickly, and giving you a lot of single target damage for the big important parts of the dungeon, which are mostly the bosses and as well as the mini bosses towards the end. Again, class tree, mostly the same. You can drop your bouncing glaives for another point somewhere else, potentially down in Unleash Power. However, again, that's not that big of a deal, so do that as you wish. Now, this last build here is the Spread Eagle build, which is a relatively new build that I've covered on my channel, so if you want a deeper dive on that, you can check out one of these 2 videos up on your screen now. Anyways, this build's main idea, besides being called Spread Eagle because of this little guy here, is to come down into Rage Fire and stop there and set put points into Restless Hunter, Inner Demon, and Glaive Tempest. This build offers a lot of burst damage every 3 minutes with your Metamorphosis, but does lose out to left-right in terms of AoE outside of that. Another additional benefit of this build is that because you have basically no enemies necessary, Mastery gets very devalued, and Versatility actually becomes your second best stat. Because of this, this build can be very, very tanky and very, very survivable, allowing you to live things in higher keys that otherwise would one-shot you. If you're doing very high keys and need that versatility, then this build could potentially be better for you. However, outside of that, unless you're doing weird pulls every 3 minutes that are just insanely large, this build will generally lose out to some of the other options, but I'm including it for completeness sake, and you can totally play this if you want, if you don't like the throwing glaives, or if you just want to play this funny name build. It is available to you, it is playable, but it can and certainly will lose out to left-right in lots of scenarios. Once you've got the talent build, the next important thing is to get your rotation down. Now for the rotation, there's basically 3 builds here. They all share very common things, mainly the Essence Break Burst window. Outside of that, I'll give individual little tips for each one. So, the Essence Break Burst window is probably the most important thing for Havoc Demon Hunter, just in general. I've actually had a ton of content on it. Other Demon Hunter creators, a ton of content on it. If you don't know it by now, feel free to skip ahead a little bit, but I'll go over it again just for prosperity's sake. So most of your damage is going to come during this button here, Essence Break. Now there's 2 kinds of windows. There's your non non-meta window and your meta window. Your meta window is going to happen every 3 minutes or so when you have meta, and your non-one's going to happen every 40 seconds or so. So the biggest thing for the Essence Break combo is really to make sure that you're not wasting any GCDs in it. So what that means is you want to make sure you have enough Fury for it. Now, in the left-right build, it means you want to kind of pool a bit of Fury before you go into it. In the other two builds today, I-Beam will fill your Fury bar, so that doesn't really matter too much. What you're going to want to do when you hit up to a pack, and I'll show you guys this for left-right, it's going to be pretty much the same for the other two builds as well, though. I'll start off with Sigil Flame, and then Hunt in. Hit Immolation Aura as you enter, throw out your Glaives, Spell Rush, Fury back in, and now you're good to go. We're not going to use my Trinket because I don't want to, but we'll hit an I-Beam, we'll turn 180, Vengeful Retreat, then we'll Essence Break as we fly through, Death Sweep, we'll hit meta, and then we'll Death Sweep again, followed by another I-Beam. So this is basically you getting the most of your damage within that window as possible. The main important part of the double of the Essence Break combo with meta is to hit that double Death Sweep with, inside of it. Now, to do that, you need a little bit of haste. However, even in AoE, getting those slashes of Death Sweep out is really, really important inside your window, and is better off than a Chaos Strike. If you're in the other build and you have low haste, it's fine. Furious Gaze will cover for you. However, in this build, in the left-right build, 6% haste is not enough to hit both of them. You need more than that. But again, it doesn't really matter. Go off what your sim says and do the best. So we've waited for about 40 seconds here, and our I-Beam is back up. So for the non-meta combo, you're going to want to do the same thing. Have momentum, throw out your whatevers. Then you're going to I-Beam, turn 180 again, Essence Break, Death Sweep, and then Annihilation twice. Now, if you're not against a single target, so if you're fighting multiple targets like I just did there, you actually want to prioritize your Glaives over Chaos Strike and Annihilation, even in your Essence Break window. But it's really best for your rotation to have those coming off CD before your Essence Break window, right? So you don't want to use them mid Essence Break if you can help it. You just want to have them off before then. That's basically it for the Essence Break combo. It's fairly simple, but if you mess it up, then you are going to be losing a lot of damage. Now, for build-specific tips, for this build, the left-right build, you do want to be using your Glaives on cooldown, pairing them with both Initiative, which is your crit buff here, and Momentum whenever possible. Always with Momentum, and whenever possible with Initiative. This really, really, really buffs your Throw Glaive damage, which in turn ends up buffing your Soul Rain damage. You can see here, really, really overtaking it. That was just 2 Glaives and did 64, 65k DPS, which is, not bad, pretty good. On top of that, make sure they don't cap. Use your Fel Rush before Blade Dance and Glaive Tempest when you can, not capping on that. And make sure you're within range for your Immolation Aura. Make sure it's hitting targets with Burning Wound. And make sure you have momentum up for the last few ticks of it. It's really, really important. The last few ticks are going to be the strongest ticks. And by doing this, you actually end up feeding a lot of damage into your Rage Fire, which is really, really important. Again, on top of that, Rage Fire, don't leave melee during the last few ticks of your Immolation Aura. It'll be a bad time for you. Other small tricks, make sure you're using your Initiative, your Vengeful Retreat backflip whenever you can. Try and pair it with the second or third hunt whenever possible. Hunting in with Initiative is a minor DPS game, but it's one you should be doing anyways. And lastly, don't forget that in AoE, Sigil Flame actually can end up doing some pretty good damage. So again, just use your Immolation Aura on cooldown, get that Essence Break window right, and use those Glaives in those Momentum and Initiative windows whenever possible. So now we're going to talk about the Shattered Destiny Glaive Tempest build. Now this build is basically the same with your Essence Break combo. It'll all be the same with double meta and all that. However, a few things do change. One, you don't want to end up using Glaives basically ever. Throwing Glaives is never really good. The only time you ever throw a Glaive is to kill your demon right before a burst window. Otherwise, you should never use it. So you want to use your Glaive Tempest on cooldown. Still use your Fury Generational abilities. Momentum isn't here, so that's not as big of a deal. However, you still do have Initiative, Unbound Chaos, and Tactical Retreat, so make sure you're using those buttons. But the big difference here, besides Glaive Tempest, is going to be Demonic Appetite, which means you do have to strafe left and right sometimes to get some of those souls for Fury, just to help collecting them. And the other big one is going to be Inner Demon. Now, Inner Demon is important. Inner Demon is going to be a large portion of your damage in AoE. So the best way to do it, if you go into your burst window, which I am going to pretend I'm about to do, I'm going to use I-Beam, then I'm going to use Annihilation once, then turn, backflip, Essence Break, Death Sweep, meta, Death Sweep, then Annihilation again, and then I-Beam. So basically, every time you use either I-Beam or Meta, you want to use an Annihilation almost right away. That's going to make sure you don't end up wasting those Inner Demon procs, and you're going to get good damage and good value out of those. The other important thing for this build is really just to not waste Fury. I fell rush glitched there. Making sure you're not wasting Fury is really important for two reasons. One, it gets you more and more I-Beams, which is going to be a lot of your damage. So, you know, I'm beaming. The I-Beam is going to be a lot of my damage. On top of that, though, wasting Fury is bad because it ends up giving you less time in Demonic. When you're in Demonic less, it means that you get less uptime of Death Sweep and less uptime of all this wonderful haste that isn't actually that good in AoE, but hey, you know, is what it is. So it's really important for smaller Demonic windows, and I'll probably let it lapse here so I can show you what I'm talking about. But when you're inside your Demonic window, you really want to make sure that you have a few souls down if you can. Maybe you have, you know, full Fury, obviously, and you want to get 2 Death Sweeps inside of it. So if I go into my I-Beam, I'm going to hit I-Beam, and the first global wants to be the Death Sweep. So I'm Death Sweeping, and then I'm just spending as much Fury as I can, using my Glaive Tempest, using my slashes, and there I got 2 Death Sweeps. So it's very, very important for every single I-Beam to get 2 Death Sweeps. Basically, it's very free at any value of haste. I have 6% haste and I get it. As long as you use Death Sweep as soon as you enter I-Beam, then you'll be good to go. You'll be very fine, and everything will be good. So that's about it for this build. Making sure you use your Inner Demon procs, not wasting them, and then making sure you're just using your Glaive Tempest basically on cooldown and not with an Essence Break, and then using your Tactical Retreat every 20 seconds, strafing for Demonic Appetite, and then making sure you're getting 2 Death Sweeps in every I-Beam. So the last build rotation, the left-right build, is going to be the most weird and unique of the few. So this one's combining Glaive Tempest, Restless Hunter, Inner Demon, and Ragefire all together. So we'll give a little bit of a special little section for it, and for, you know, the different buttons you have. So with the introduction of both Ragefire, Burning Wound, and Restless Hunter, your rotation has get a bit cluttered, so it's very important in combat that when you start off, you can throw a Glaive. This is the only time you ever want to throw a Glaive to spread Burning Wound. Otherwise, don't ever do that, and that's not even potentially good. From then on out, you do want to be tab targeting to spread your Burning Wound. So see how I'm tabbing on my autos, so that I'm putting my Burning Wound on up to 3 targets. After you do 3, you can stop, but just make sure they don't drop off. You also make sure you're using your Glaive Tempest, preferably with Initiative if you can. If not a big deal. Ragefire is a bit less of an importance, but it still, you know, ends up doing a lot of damage, and you want to keep it up with momentum for the last few seconds. But the big difference is going to be your I-Beam window. So the big difference here is that you combine Restless Hunter with Inner Demon. So basically what you want to do, you want to take the Inner Demon rotation from the Satyr Destiny build where you use I-Beam Annihilation, Vengeful Retreat, Essence Break, Death Sweep, Meta, Death Sweep, Annihilation, I-Beam Annihilation. But on top of that, you actually want to meta as fast as physically possible after that first Death Sweep. Now, I don't have enough haste right now to hit it, but when you have Lust and when you have more haste with Furious Gaze and stuff, then you do end up getting the animation cancel for Restless Hunter and having very, very large damage from your Death Sweeps. So I'll go in and show you what I mean. So we'll start off with a hypothetical pull up on a pack here. I'll hunt in, I'll throw my Glaive out, I'll Immolation Aura, Glaive Tempest, rush out, bounce back in. Then we're going to I-Beam, Annihilation, turn, Essence Break, Death Sweep, Meta, Death Sweep, Annihilation. We're going to Momentum again, I-Beam, Glaive Tempest, Death Sweep, Rush, Annihilation. At this point, I wasn't even tab targeting. And that's kind of your opener. Now, the opener with this build does do a lot of damage. But outside of your opener, you do want to make sure you're just tab targeting, keeping up your Burning Wound whenever possible on all these targets, and just using all your buttons, basically. So you're taking the complexity of the Momentum build, taking the complexities of the other build, and kind of adding them together. So basically, if you can master the first 2, then you'll end up doing pretty well on this third one as well. The damage this one can do in burst with this kind of sustained 5 target is pretty good. You know, pretty solid. So this build may end up being better eventually in the future, but right now it's not. But if you enjoy playing this build or just want to practice it, those are kind of the things that you should be looking at and working on. There's one thing I forgot to mention in those sections, and that is going to be Sigil of Misery with the Misery and Defeat talent. Now this talent's not that hard to use. Basically, during your full opener, so we'll, you know, pretend this is our full opener here. Go in, throw our Glaives out. You want to use it right before the I-Beam, so be right about now. Doing this causes you to break it mid I-Beam, which means you get it during your whole Essence Break and the last few ticks of your Immolation Aura, which causes you to have really big both hunt damage, rage fire damage, eye beam damage, and Immolation Aura damage, and a little bit of a death sweep as well. So this is kind of the best part for you to use it. It's right after your eye beam. This is the same for all the builds. Oh, sorry, right before your eye beam. It's the same for all the builds, and doing so can really do some massive damage with that dot. Sorry, not with that, but with all your kind of big hitting abilities coming during that time. Once you've got your talents and rotation down, the best next thing to do is grab your gear and your stats. So for Mythic Plus, realistically, you're going to want to prioritize crit over everything in all scenarios. Crit's just going to be your best. After that, Mastery comes in at second best for most of these builds. If you're using the Spread Eagle build, then Versatility does edge out Mastery because a lot of your sources aren't any means necessary based. But even for the Shattered Destiny build, Mastery is very powerful. From there, Versatility will tend to be your third best stat, with Mastery being third best for Spread Eagle. Haste will generally be your worst stat. It's a little bit better for the Shattered Destiny build, but not by a lot where it starts to edge out anything else, instead swapping place with Versatility. So, to recap, crit is going to be your best always, with Mastery as a good second option. If you're playing the Spread Eagle build, Versatility will be your best second option instead. If you want to pick up some Haste, go for it, but Haste isn't that good in AoE. From there, trinkets you're going to want to pick up are going to be threefold. You can either get the Incarnate Icon from Raid is going to be your best passive option. However, if you're only an M+ player, that's very okay. You can also get the Hunger of the Pack icon from Halls of Valor, or the Eye of Skovald trinket, which is a little bit better, but you have to have a ranged player trade it to you. We can't naturally loot it, but if you can get it, it's very good. For your active trinket, the other option, Puzzle Box from Algethar Academy is going to be your best bet. It's also very farmable, which is good. Other good options include Manic Grief Torch from the Raid, or Windscar Whetstone, but I will say that Windscar Whetstone is a little worse in AoE, and it tends to be a better single target option. For embellishments, the best two are just going to be your Elemental Lariat and some piece crafted with a blue silken linen. The stats you get from both of them are just so powerful, it's not really worth it to take anything else. Generally, in terms of gear outside of that, there's nothing else really that you want too much. Mythic Aeronog Ring or whatever is great and all, but again, this is for Mythic Plus, so if you don't go in the raid, then it's not really too feasible for you to have a raid item. Storm Slash and the ring from Court of Stars, the auto attack ring, aren't too good for M+ for Havoc because of their stats and because they're also just single target procs. You're better off getting things that have high crit or mastery instead of those items. So for consumables in dungeons, there's a few things you're going to want. Basically, you're always going to want the buzzing runes for your weapons. Having that crit is very powerful. If you're in normal keys for a file, I would recommend Ice File of Corrupting Rage. Generally, the downside there is not very strong. We have a lot of magic resistance naturally. So the damage it deals to you is very low, and you're not really going to end up feeling it. But if you are worried about dying to it, then you can swap over to the File of Elemental Chaos instead. If you're pushing really high keys, like a 25, 26, where the unavoidable damage from those keys will start to one-shot you, then I will recommend grabbing the Flask of Tepid Versatility. I know on like a 25 or 26 Tyrannical, you need Tepid Versatility as well as the Versatility buff for Algethar Academy specifically to live some of the bosses. So in scenarios where that Versatility saves your life, then it's very strong. However, in most scenarios, it won't be that good, and you're better off taking the Ice File of Corrupting Rage or the File of Elemental Chaos. For enchants, you're going to want Sophic Devotion for your weapons. It's the best all-around enchant. Then just grab Critical Strike on your rings. So I want to end off these section and this video by talking instead about Havoc's role in Mythic Plus, why you'd want to play it, and kind of the utility and stops it has. So Havoc's main thing is going to be AoE damage. We do a ton of AoE damage, especially with the left-right build, with stuff like Rage Fire, Soul Rend, Accelerating Blade, Eye Beam, Death Sweep, Essence Break, Any Means Necessary, Collective Anguish, The Hunt. A lot of your stuff, Immolation Aura, a lot of your stuff hits multiple targets and hits them very hard. You're a little worse at priority damage, however, even then you're not too bad. You can throw Chaos Strikes and stuff. Your single target is a little worse than some of the other options out there, but it's not noticeably worse, where you'll feel like you're going to be, dragging the key down or making it worse for your allies. Their damage is still fairly good. It's still really good, and the fact that you can deal damage from range with their glaives makes for a very good, kind of middle ground versatile option, not versatility the stat for that. In terms of stops, Havoc has some powerful ones. You do have the access to Chaos Nova, which is a very powerful AoE stun, and you can make it even shorter cooldown. So normally it's 1 minute, you can make it 40 seconds, which is quite powerful in a lot of scenarios. You have access to a ranged kick, which is very, very good. Ranged kicks are fairly uncommon. There's only a few that melee have, that being Shaman and Death Knight, and then Demon Hunter. Shaman's is better though, but you know, hey, is what it is. You also have access to a Purge with Consume Magic, and if you're a Blood Elf, you have the AoE Purge Arcane Torrent as your racial. Night Elf has Shadow Meld, which is also very useful for melding off packs or melding off aggro, which does happen as a Havoc. You do rip a lot of aggro because you deal a lot of crits, and crits generate more threat, and you also just deal a lot of damage up front with your initiative and stuff like that. In terms of other stops, you have Imprison, which is one of 3 hard CCs in the game. You can use it to skip mobs, potentially. You can use it as a stop on any caster mob that is able to be imprisoned. You can only use it on demons, beasts, or humanoids, so dragons and stuff like that can't be used on. But it's on a very short cooldown at 45 seconds and can be used as a stop in an emergency, or really just if your group has run out of stops. It's not as good as Sap, but I personally think it's a little bit better than like Dream Walk or whatever the Evoker one is. So it's pretty good to pick up in Prison. You definitely want to grab this. You also have a stop with meta, but I wouldn't really count that. Your final stop that you'll generally have is going to be Sigil of Misery. Now, you do often use this for DPS at the start of your burst window for 20% extra damage, but if you're not playing this talent and instead are opting for the more stop route here, then Sigil of Misery can be a good stop as a last resort on a bunch of targets. Remember, this does come out 2 seconds after you use it, so you do have to be a bit preemptive here. You do have to know when things are coming up and hope that the cast time is less than 2 seconds. So for that reason, it's generally not too good as a stop. It's not like we have Sigil of Silence anymore or anything. Rip Sigil of Silence. It was great when we had you, which is why that Misery and Defeat is generally pretty good for it. But, you know, it is there if you need it. Our last stop comes in the class tree, which is Fell Eruption, which is our 20-yard range, 30-second cooldown, single target stun. It's instant. It's very powerful, but we don't take it. Now, the reason for that is that it's just kind of impossible to take utility on our tree without dropping off a lot of damage. So it kind of just sits there. If you do need to take it, if you do want it, then you will drop out Looks Can Kill to pick it up. That would be your best option there. If you also need to take our immunity, which is something that we could potentially bring, if you needed to, then you also drop Looks Can Kill. If you want both, then you end up dropping Chaotic Transformation. But if you pick up both, it's like a 6 to 8% DPS loss, and if you just pick up one, it's like 4 or 3. So it's very, unideal to take it, but if you do need those more stops, you can have them. We also bring Darkness. Darkness is pretty powerful utility in Raid. In Dungeons, it's not as good. Generally, there's less abilities where, everybody's kind of getting hit at once. And when you are, there's only 5 of you, right? So there's less of a chance for things to happen. However, it can be very strong in scenarios where you're all stacked up, like on Herja. Herja's the only one that's coming to mind right now. Not Azure Blade. Ice something or other. The third boss of Azure Vaults. You're all stacked up there. There are a few dungeons where you are all stacked up at once with lots of ticking damage or one big hit where this thing can be useful. But generally, it's best to just kind of use it as a tank external even. If they're tanking a big pack, dropping Darkness on them gives them a lot of chances to dodge those melees or those hits that might drop them low. So I tend to use mine as either like a personal. If like I need a little something extra, I might, just gamble and see if I can get it. You can use it as a group defensive or group CD in those scenarios where you're all stacked up. Or most often just using it as a tank external to kind of save a pull, save a tank's life, make it very good there. Havoc also brings with them something underrated is their Master of the Glaive slow. So you end up slowing 3 enemies by 50%, basically full uptime, because you're throwing out so many glaives. Now, it's only 3 enemies, and then you can do it to 6, I guess, because your glaives can each hit 3 targets. Which can end up being an AoE slow. It's not the most powerful slow in the game. It's not the best slow in the game, but it is there as an option for Havoc. You generally pick it up because it gives your glaive 2 charges, which is really good. And it's just a little nice added benefit slow on top. Outside of all of these, damaging and CC and stuff, things, your best thing as Havoc is that you're just really tanky, as long as it's not physical damage. Against magic damage, you have Illidari Knowledge, which reduces magic damage by 16%. You have a passive 15% damage reduction in your tree. You have 6% extra max health at all times. You have 10% leech at all times and 20% while in Metamorphosis. And you have just like a ton of things that can help heal you. You have Fart of the Flame, which gives you both Glaive Leech, which is like your glaive hits it for like 500,000. That's a pretty big leech off that, as well as just the natural heal here. So Havoc is very tanky. Now, where it falls a little bit way on the wayside is against physical damage, single target damage, and then I do want to say stops a little bit. We do have a kick, an imprison, and a stun, but outside of that, we don't offer too much more. Sigil of Misery is very unreliable, and we don't really take our single target Fel Eruption, so there's a little bit weaker there, but we generally bring a really good damage profile for keys, as long as they're not super physical damage related, or you, for some reason, you're in like a raid. I don't know. There's no bosses or dungeons where trash doesn't matter. But that's a good little overview of all the options Havoc brings. That is it for my M+ guide for Havoc Demon Hunter in Season 1. I went over and did a little bit of the kind of rotation, talents, kind of the gear you want, the consumables you want, and little tips and talking about why you'd want to play one, why you want to bring one, and of course, their utility and their stops. If you want a little breakdown dungeon by dungeon for tips specific to each dungeon, let me know, and I can think about jumping in and doing those little dungeon guides. But if not, leave a like on the video, drop a comment down below as well if you have any questions, or just to kind of help the video spread around, and drop a sub if you found it helpful. I really appreciate everybody who helps support these videos. Really, really, really kind of crazy that, you know, we're up past 4,000 now and pushing towards 5K, which is insane. I never really thought I'd get here. So I just, you know, big thank you to all of you. Every single one of you is great, and helping me do this is wonderful and amazing. And I hope this video helps you out and kind of helps you push higher into keys, helps you pump out some damage in those keys as well. So with that, this is me signing off. Thank you so much for watching the video. I will catch you guys next time. Peace. A big shout out to my YouTube channel members, Dimmy and Flapjack67. Your guys' support has really helped me make these videos as good as I can. If you're looking to support me and help me make more videos and better videos, then click the link in the description below to learn more about channel membership and get a ton of sweet perks while you help me make this channel as great as it can. Thank you.